Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome everyone. A few things about Zoom if you're new to this platform. Jill is our moderator, Jill Holland, and she will be muting you both video and sound if you're not speaking to the room tonight, so don't be offended with that. If you do want to address the board tonight during our meeting, there is a section on the agenda. It's 7.0 Public Forum. And what we ask is that you go ahead and use the chat function to let Jill know that you want to address the board during that public forum part. You'll need to include your name and your address in there. And another note on chat. Chat isn't intended to be used for asking questions throughout the meeting. And so know if you do ask a question and it doesn't get answered, we'll keep track of it, and if we can handle it after the meeting, we will. And I think that's it for the Zoom stuff. So again, if you want to address the board during our meeting tonight, during the public forum piece, do use the chat to let Jill know that with your full name and address. So that's public forum sign up. Visitor guest book. We don't think we have any official visitors to identify, and any announcements. I have none. Troy, do you have any announcements? Okay, let's move on. Thank you, Troy. I saw you shake your head. Let's move on to presentations. So 3.1 is operational blueprints for hybrid instruction model, and Troy will be presenting and sharing your screen, I believe.
All right. So tonight we listened to the folks that we've had some feedback from. We've moved our presentation to the beginning of the meeting so that the public will have an opportunity to provide input based on the presentation earlier in the program. So we've made that adjustment. Before we get started, we have our administrators are going to address each of their buildings, the slides that are specific to each of their buildings. And we have a nurse joining us this evening as well. If we may bring her in to help us with a couple slides on rapid testing, but there will be several of us that are contributing to the presentation tonight. I would like to make a statement before we get started, just to help clarify the process we're going through and help with the understanding of where we're headed. So, dear Mount Angel School Board, families, students, and community. Tonight, we will present our current plans for transitioning our instructional models to a hybrid model that best fits Mount Angel Schools and the RSSL Guidance 5.5.0 released on January 19th. These plans are being developed in the interest of serving our students in the best manner possible while adhering to the health and safety of all staff and students at all times. The COVID-19 metrics appear to be in a downward trend, and we could possibly be moving to from the extreme risk level to the high risk level as early as this week. As we move forward, we do so focused on moving students to in-person instruction as quickly as possible without question regarding county metrics trends. We have an MOU in place with our teachers, and the majority of our staff have received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Tonight, we are happy to share that we are still on track to transition our elementary students to in-person instruction starting March 1st. We have shared a timeline that fully transitions K-2 students to 4 days in-person instruction and students in grades 3 through 12 to 2 days of in-person instruction by April 5th. On days when our students in grades 3 through 12 are learning from home, they will have access to learning from live streaming instruction from their teachers while they're at home. It is of vital importance that families understand just how different the in-person experience for students will be when they return to their building. All students and staff movements, actions will be limited and closely monitored by new entrances, exits, drop-off areas, and other processes. Screening, cleaning, sanitizing, and logging entry and movement will replace time previously used for instruction. Recess will be structured in cohorts, limiting student interactions. Breakfast and lunch will be served in the classrooms. 6 feet spacing will be followed at all times. Mrs. Winslow and her St. Mary's staff have done an amazing job of developing an instructional video, which we have here tonight, and the families to help the families gain a better understanding of what the hybrid model looks like before they return to the building. Erica Gordon has worked closely with our nursing staff, prepare and present health and safety trainings for our staff and all stakeholders. And our administrative team has worked tirelessly with their staffs, department directors, and associations to provide the detailed processes necessary to meet the requirements of the guidance and the academic and social needs of our students. Our district has been relentless in their pursuit to provide the best instruction possible via comprehensive distance learning, or CDL. While at the same time, we've been working to design, plan, and prepare for an instructional model under hundreds of restrictions that severely limit our ability to serve the vital needs of our staff, students, and families. I also want to recognize the ongoing efforts of our support staff since the onset of the pandemic back in March. Through all the ups and downs, the wildfires, the smoke, the power outages, our cooks, bus drivers, and custodians and maintenance staff have persevered. Our families, about 340 of them, get meals delivered to them every day of the week. All services will continue. We will continue to provide all of these services for families through this transition. All of these processes take an enormous amount of time and resources. We have asked for patience and grace throughout the past enduring 10 months. The majority of our staff and families have been very understanding and helpful. We also have a small group of families that continue to share their concerns and frustrations with our processes and communications, and what they interpret as our failure to advocate for our kids getting back into our classrooms. For the majority of families, I say thank you and for your patience and grace. For the ongoing critics, I ask that you recognize the efforts and the limitations and support the efforts that are allowable and realistic for our district to get back into in-person. While preparing our primary grades to transition to in-person, we have focused on getting the most vulnerable students into our building 4 days a week. The logistics of making this happen are numerous. Spacing alone has been our biggest challenge. We have completely transformed all teaching spaces that are accessible for our students. Our gym, covered area, and playground at St. Mary's will be split into 5 separate areas, keeping cohorts separated. We've had to remove all non-essential furniture, rearrange furniture, move furniture between buildings, and purchase additional desks for our smallest students. If enrollment in our primary classrooms reaches a threshold, we may be removing permanent islands from our elementary classrooms to provide the minimum space required by the guidance. We restarted our sports conditioning and workouts on campus last week, and will allow youth sports organizations on our fields beginning March 20th. The latest guidance allows for a limited number of students to practice indoors as well, which we will be taking immediate advantage of. We expect to hear changes to the plans and the schedules for high school sports as early as this week. Communications during these times have been most challenging. What to share, when to share it, and who to share it with is a constant gamble going through this process. Could we do a better job of communicating? I'm not sure, because many parents refuse to accept what we have to say. We continue to provide families with updates as information is received and prepared. We are one of very few districts continuing to provide public family forums, and we are a rare district in the fact that we provide individual responses to every complaint or concern that we receive from our parents. We have several parents with multiple submissions on the same concerns that take time as well. This is a courtesy not provided by other district administrators or superintendents. Our responses may not always be as timely as you wish, but remember that we are a fully functioning school district even during CDL. We are transitioning to a different way of teaching and managing instruction and learning along the way. We are consistently faced with the dilemma of sharing information that is potentially outdated before it reaches families, and the likelihood of information providing false hope for our families and students. We hope and will continue to provide information in as timely of a manner as possible. This is a time to be kind to one another. We all have the same interests. We are all here to meet the many needs of all kids. We will continue to welcome feedback that helps our efforts to move forward with planning and preparations. Thank you for joining us this evening. So metrics, like I mentioned in my statement, they are headed in the downward trend, and today's release shows that as well. Some of the metrics are being recorded by extreme or levels of risk. This is the front page of our website showing that we were at 312 last week per 100,000. We're down to 288. So this should change our risk level from extreme to high as of today. Jasmine Winslow and her staff have done an amazing job of putting together a little short video that they're going to be sharing with families. And so we're going to take 3 to 4 minutes here to share that with everyone tonight.
Welcome back to St. Mary's Public School. It's been a long time since we've been together in the school building, and we're excited to be back. Our job is to be as safe and healthy as possible. Before school each day, we make sure we feel well so we can go to school. If not, we can stay home and attend class on Zoom. We want everyone to stay as healthy as possible, so we wear our masks as soon as we step on school property or get in line for the bus. On the bus, we sit separated from others, and we each have our own seat. When we get dropped off at school, we stay 6 feet apart and walk to our teacher's landing zone. We wait until we are called to move forward. When we enter into the building, we sanitize our hands. We follow the path, staying on the right side of the hallway until we get to class. In our classroom, things look different. We each get our own desk. We hang our coats on our chairs, and our backpacks stay with us in our packs block. We eat our breakfasts and then put our masks back on. After we clean up, we unload our materials and watch morning assembly before we begin our work. When we need to use the restroom, we ask our teacher to make sure no one else is in there. Our teacher adds our name to the list so other teachers know not to send someone else at the same time. We go, flush, wash, and leave quickly so someone else can have a turn. Our recess time is different and super fun. We have different zones for each classroom, and there's plenty of space for all of us. Mrs. Taylor plans fun activities for each zone, and we can take a break if needed. At lunchtime, we take turns and sanitize our hands to eat. We get our lunch and return to our seat. We unload all of the food and get it ready to eat. When our teacher says it's okay, we take our masks off and eat while we watch our daily video. It's more important than ever before to be feeling well at school. If we start to feel sick, we go to the eagle's nest to wait while someone calls our grown-ups to come pick us up. At the end of the day, we pack all of our materials carefully in our backpacks and head outside to our landing zone. We make sure our teacher says it's okay to go when we see our grown-up. We are happy to be back with our teachers and friends at St. Mary's.
Awesome. Thank you, Jasmine. Very well done.
Welcome back to St. Mary's Public.
Okay, Jasmine will share our first few
All right.
slides.
Yeah, if we could go back one slide, that would be great.
Sorry.
That's all right. Okay, so just a few more details that I would add, and I think Troy has mentioned most of these, but our K-1 students will begin in-person instruction March 1st. Those students will attend Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and Wednesdays they will still learn from home. We're still working on exact details, but we plan on having students arrive between 8 and 8:15 in the morning. And then these students are done at 1 o'clock. So it follows the same schedule that they have now. Students remain in their own classroom for instruction and meals, but they have a 30-minute structured recess that's planned by the PE teacher and supervised by the classroom teachers. That just allows more adults to be out there, out supervising. And then teachers will be live streaming their instruction on Zoom for students that are choosing, like families that are choosing to remain in the CDL model, or for students that just aren't feeling well that day. They'll still have access to that instruction. So second grade students and third grade students will begin on March 15th, which is just 2 weeks later. But second grade students will also attend 4 days a week, still arriving at the same time, the 8 to 8:15, and departing at 1 o'clock. The third grade students are going to be in 2 different cohorts, either a Monday, Tuesday cohort or a Thursday, Friday cohort. We feel that more consistency with back-to-back days is important for younger students. The students will join the live stream when they are at home. So, similar to any students that choose to remain at home, for the 4 days. These students still also arrive between 8 and 8:15, but their day lasts until 1:30, just like it does now. And then fourth and fifth grade students will begin April 5th, which is 2 instructional weeks after the 15th. They are also in 2 cohorts and also go until 1:30 each day. So we have looked at our class sizes and our spaces, and these are not completely definite, but they're very close to looking at our class size maximums per grade level. So as Troy alluded to, spacing is an issue, and it is the barrier for us. So K-1 classrooms right now have a maximum of 15 to possibly 16 students. If we have to have more students in person than that, that's when we'll have to look at taking out some permanent structures in the classroom, because we just physically do not have the space. We have emptied out the classrooms to have like almost no additional furniture besides the student desks and chairs. And we just don't have any more space. Second grade, we can fit, we're thinking about up to 20. The reason that second grade can fit more is because we are moving the second grade classrooms into different locations in the building. We don't have classrooms that can fit 20 students. So we will have one of those classrooms actually in our library, and another of those classrooms in our art room, which is a larger space. And then third through fifth grade classrooms, we anticipate to be able to get about 18 students in those spaces. And again, that works because it's only half of the class, right, at that time. So I wanted to share just a little bit about the planning process and kind of where we are right now. So, you know, we know a lot of details, but there are still some things that we're working out. One of those things is the entry and exit each day for students and families. So this is my rough diagram of the front of the school building. And we're trying to make this the focus for just the K-1 drop-off for families because we have different entrances around our school building. We're going to make use of all of those entrances so that we can really try to keep students and families safe and separated as much as possible. So over on the right side, you can see there's an orange box that says K-1 entrance. And that is kind of over on the wing of the building where currently our K-1, most of our K-1 classes are. All of them will be moved over there, so they're all in one location. So that is where our K-1 students will enter the building, and that's also where they will exit. So there are a few things we're still working out with this, and we will certainly have information that we provide to families, but that's kind of what we're looking at. So this would just be the K-1 drop-off and pickup zone. The next slide shows a draft. It's a little less settled, but this is where we're looking at drop-offs for 2 through 5. So again, in the top right corner, you're going to see an orange box that shows where the second grade entrance is. This is by the music room and kind of off of the gym. And then over completely to the right, you'll see the 3-5 entrance, which actually there's like a sidewalk that goes over toward that side of the building. So this is the playground, you know, part of our building. The covered area will be a nice area for the classes to line up and be able to go in and come back out. Our most challenging part here is where to have families drop students off and pick them up. We know we have plenty of space for buses. So we're still working on this, and we will definitely get information out to families before we start in person. All right, middle school's next.
All right, thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
So the middle school, students will still receive 4 days of teacher facilitated instruction each week, 2 days being on site and 2 days at a distance, those 2 days being live streamed. Cohort A will continue to meet when we actually transition to that model. Cohort A will be Mondays and Thursdays, with cohort B being Tuesdays and Fridays. And Wednesdays will continue to be asynchronous instruction days for students. And so 2 staff members will be assigned to each core content area classroom. This will allow for the teacher who has students in front of them to be meeting the needs of those students, and another staff member to be meeting the needs of the students learning at a distance. So they can help facilitate instruction that day, ask questions to the teacher who's facilitating that instruction, and just be able to keep a cohesive classroom together, both from a distance and in person. Social studies will replace PE health in student schedules for 3rd and 4th quarters. However, we just saw such a great need for PE that we're continuing to keep PE health in the schedule for all students 1 day per week. The class sizes at the middle school are as follows there. 6th grade maximum is about 15 students, with 7th grade being our highest at 16. Where we tend to run into some problems is when we talk about electives. That's where we get some cross grade level exposure, and 2 grade levels typically come together for our elective classes, where our highest one is currently sitting at 19. But again, those can be adjusted, just depending on enrollment. And so electives are sitting at 19 currently. There are 2 models in which we're considering. And so I'll walk you through the structure of both of these models. The first one that you see is our current bell schedule. And we would have morning breakfast available in first period classrooms for all students. Students would be eating on site for lunch in those grade level cohorts. Elective classes would be in person, and then office hours would still remain at a distance. The considerations with this current option is that lunch on campus, obviously brings up some additional health and safety considerations. And so that, comes into play and just, requires us to think through logistics a little bit differently. Like I mentioned before, cross-cohort exposure in elective classes, not only are we talking grade levels that are a concern, but even if they're different cohorts within the same grade level, that can also bring increased levels of risk. Those larger elective sizes can cause capacity issues within certain classrooms. And so, like Jasmine mentioned, furniture is having to be moved out and, rooms rearranged to try to provide additional space. The transportation of band instruments and elective supplies on and off site on instructional days is another consideration we're trying to work through. We know, again, with lockers, that just brings on additional health and safety considerations that we have to help students navigate through, and whether or not we can provide that transition time where students can be going to and from lockers is still yet to be seen. And then 6th through 8th grade band would fall in the same period. So right now, 6th grade has its own band class where they're usually working on some more beginning level band. And 7th and 8th grade have their own class where it's more intermediate to advanced band, a little bit different structure. And so in this model, it would force both of those to come together, which again poses some additional questions and challenges that we have to work through. Option 2, this is an alternate bell schedule. It follows the same schedule that you would see from periods 1 through 4 for the day, with all students being on campus from 8 a.m. to, or sorry, I should paraphrase. The students who are on campus they would be on campus from 8 a.m. to 12:10 in the afternoon. And then teacher lunches and prep would provide time for students to transition home. And we would have our electives and office hours at a distance. Breakfast would still be available in first period classrooms. Some of the considerations here is that lunches would continue to be delivered to students and families once per week, which is exactly what we're doing now. It would provide an extended lunch break for students who will be more restricted in their classroom environment. So it'll give them an opportunity to get up, walk around, stretch their legs, and then come back for 5th period, which we hope would also increase office hour participation. It also lessens the need for band instruments and elective supplies to be transported back and forth. Those could just remain at home, and we can continue with the same level of elective instruction as we have throughout the course of the year. And with that, I will pass, I'll pass it on to JFK. I'll talk about LIPI a little bit in my admin board report.
Thanks, Jared, and thank everybody for being here tonight. And as we're discussing this, the models of return to in-person learning, JFK, the reason why we chose this model in the beginning was the ease to transition back into a hybrid model. What you'll look at here is there's one additional lunch that's been added, so we can actually take the number of students and cut them in half. We'll actually have our students eating in the gym, and they'll pick up their lunches, they'll go to the gym, they'll eat in the gym, and then once they're done, they'll actually transition back into their classrooms. And that, for some of them, it would be advisory after their lunch, and some would actually have advisory prior to their lunch. So it's the only tweak that we made in our schedule. So our hybrid instructional model, it would be, you've already heard this before with Jared. It's 2 days of synchronous learning in person and 2 days of live streaming at home. Our cohorts will be divided into two. We're trying to figure out the best way to do this. Right now, we're running into some barriers with the total number of kids in our classrooms. Right now, the occupancy rates that we're seeing are about 15 to 16 in our classrooms, given each person has 35 square feet. So right now, 40% of my classes are over that number. So we're trying to figure out ways. Mr. Rell, our counselor, is balancing schedules. You've heard from him. Your students have heard from him to complete their schedules. So my hope is that we'll have schedules completed before we start the third quarter, so we have a much better understanding of where we're at. Students will continue to receive 4 periods of 4 70-minute periods a day, and then 1 30-minute advisory period per day, which is what our current model is. We will also have PE. As you can imagine, the guidance seems to be changing almost on a weekly basis with regards to indoor workouts as well as PE. So as this is written right now, we would use the current guidance, which means that we can't use locker rooms and we can't dress down for PE. So if there's a change within the next week, which is definitely a possibility, that very well could change. All of our electives will continue as scheduled for quarters 3 and 4. We're not making any changes there. And the last bullet point there is really the big one. You know, class sizes will be determined by room occupancy capacity using the 35 square foot per student and teacher guidance. We have to remember it's everybody that's in the classroom. So at this point, we're beyond the planning stage really. And now as we're walking through the building, we've got 3 classrooms set up, and we're realizing that the number that we thought was the number, which was 20 people per classroom, is looking more like about 15 at this point. And I'll just jump right into our limited in-person instruction, which we call, of course, we're in education, we actually have to have acronyms. We started last Thursday with 2 cohorts that are attending 2 days per week. The AM cohort runs from 9:15 to 11:15. The PM cohort runs from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And my plan is to add additional cohorts when we're able to do that. We have criteria that my staff has looked at in the past that we've rated kids on, as far as 8 indicators that we were looking at. And this was the first group that needed the most intensive support. We'll be looking at that next group here and hopefully bringing some more kids back in within a week or 2 weeks at this point. So, and that's what that last bullet point talks about.
Okay, thank you, Dale. As you heard, each of our administrators refer to the live streaming instruction. This is something that has taken a lot of work on behalf of, we have teachers who piloted this. We have our tech folks have worked really hard on making this a possibility to happen at all buildings. We have the technology is either ordered or being installed currently. And we are going to be ready to provide this opportunity. Again, we're really fortunate to have this to be able to happen, because as you can see by spacing, we're not able to get all of our kids in the building every day, but as an alternative, we are able to provide them with live instruction each day via Zoom. So it will look a little different. It's just teachers, you know, they'll have a screen that will show them and their teaching space. But if a teacher has to move out of the line of sight to help a student, they're going to be lost for those who are tapping in through live streaming, but it would only be a short and temporary moment.
Hey,
Very
hi
good.
everybody. I almost said good morning. It's been that kind of day, hasn't it? So to piggyback on what Mr. Peterson shared, our community transition program, which we call CTP, also started limited in person last week. We have one cohort that's attending 2 days per week. And we will be adding additional cohorts every 1 to 2 weeks. So we are actually meeting as a team on the 11th to identify what's our next cohort. And then we have meetings every week to keep adding to that. That program does include 3 districts. And so it's kind of it's a larger team that meets because we have not only our entire district to coordinate, but then 2 other districts. But so far so good. It's really exciting to have our adult students back on campus. They are limited to 2 hours per day, and it's in addition to their regular instructional program. Our farthest students do have to have about an hour of transportation time, and so we have to factor that in. And so our focus for these students is what are we not able to teach through a screen digitally. And so those are things such as, life skills, social skills, and our transition/vocational type skills. So the focus for our adult students is how do we get them prepared to be as independent as possible once they age out of our program at 21. And I think the next ones, Troy, are yep, I'll take these. So as we get ready to have full hybrid on site, part of the pieces that we need to offer, because if you are familiar with the RSSL document, they have a metrics table, and I'm just going to refer to it. If you want to look it up, it's on page 17. As we've talked about before, the metrics did become advisory, but they do have some stipulations around those metrics. So if you're operating outside of the metrics, we must offer access to on-site testing for symptomatic students and staff. Testing is optional and parents must provide consent. And I just gave some information here as far as the cost goes, because I know people have emailed us about how does this work? And so there's test kits that are provided from the federal government through to OHA, and then school districts sign up and they come from OHA to the schools. The tests are actually free, but the schools are responsible for the rest of that. So we need to provide the staff, we need to make sure that our staff are trained, we need to provide the PPE, and then we're responsible every day for reporting of any results, whether they're positive or negative. The tests that are being used are from Abbott, which you're probably familiar with as far as pharmaceutical companies go, and it's the Binax Now. It's a rapid test. The results are ready in 15 minutes. Anybody, any adult in the school setting can be trained. Doesn't require a nurse or any other professional medical personnel. It is a nasal swab, but unlike some of the initial COVID tests that we heard about that go way up there, this is just barely getting in to that nasal cavity, and it's just like just barely getting in, and it goes around just a few times. This is not a deep nasal swab, so it's very painless. It's just like if a kid had a gooey nose, and we, as a parent, you're just kind of cleaning that out. So that's what that looks like. It is, though, required that it's self-administered. No adult, even a parent, no adult can assist the student in this. That's part of the requirements. So if a student, either due to age or disability, is not able to self-administer, then we are required to refer them on to their healthcare provider. The other side of that is anyone who is symptomatic, anybody who is showing primary symptoms of COVID, must leave the school immediately. Even if this test shows negative, they still need to leave the campus immediately and they're not allowed to return until we've gone through the process with our nursing team per the RSSL guidance. And so that is a little bit mysterious, I guess, as far as, you know, the testing. But the plus side is that it does open up access to people who may not have otherwise had access to testing. And I do have our nurse, well, one of our nurses, we have a lovely team of nurses here. If the board has any questions that I may not have covered. Hearing none.
Okay, thank you, Erica. Student transportation, as you can see, is a key piece of making this work as well, because we have to use the same number of buses for a lot more routes, getting kids to and from school. We're going to increase our buses from 3 to 4 running full routes. Times, as you heard from our administrators, are going to be staggered. They're still working on some of those details as they collect information from which families will be participating in transportation and which cohorts they are in as far as when they will be arriving and leaving each day. And for a high school, since there's such a small number of students that are using our transportation system, we're going to use our minibuses or minivans even to provide their service. Nutrition services, all students again will be receiving breakfast and lunch daily. Meals will continue to be delivered to students while they're in CDL. Meals will be delivered in boxes or bags in the buildings each day. Our staff are working on trying to provide warm meals on occasion, but that is going to be really challenging with the requirement to distribute them to the classrooms. Breakfast will be eaten in the classroom, and lunch will be eaten in the classrooms at St. Mary's, as you heard earlier. And then at the high school, they're going to provide a space in the perimeter of the gym for students to have lunch there. Okay, that's the end of our presentation for our hybrid model. This information will all be put up on the website tomorrow, and of course the board meetings are always recorded if you want to go back and watch the presentation. And then we're also sending information out to families in the coming days as well.
Any board members have questions or comments for Troy at this time?
Are we asking questions here or doing the discussion time?
We did provide a discussion item for if you have some later. You may have more after public comment, so that's up to you, Sherry.
Yeah, so if you have any questions just about the content, you're welcome to ask them now, and then we can go into more detail in the discussion. But if anybody has anything that they really want answered right now, I welcome questions.
I just have one question, and I'll try to get it out so that you understand it. So I think in the original proposal, the dates were like St. Mary's coming back on February 1st, and then the older kids like first part of March.
Yeah.
I think we understand how the St. Mary's date got pushed back from February to March. But if we were prepared to go with the older kids later, you know what I mean, in the first proposal in March, is there a reason why that date got pushed back? You know, is there something in regulations that says that we have to go K1 first and then build?
No. Yes, we do have to do primary first. The advisory metrics show that you have to start with elementary and have them fully implemented before you can get into secondary. That's very clear in all the charts. But also, even if we could bring secondary back at the same time, it would still be sequential, you know, at increments, because we're going through a process that we've never done before. And we, like St. Mary's, if we were to try to bring back K-5 all at once, it would be really a good opportunity to have a disaster and end up with all of our kids being pushed out for 2 weeks to be quarantined. So we have them staggered so that we can process and make improvements as we move along, so that we can ensure that we keep our cohorts separate and that we keep our kids and our staff healthy as we move forward. But to answer your question again, is the elementary have to come back first based on the guidance and the metrics, advisory metrics.
But Troy, could they come back simultaneously?
No.
If you
Not
look
according-
at
they
page
can't?
17 on the guidance on that chart, it's written on page 17 that I referenced. It's
So
on,
is there a timeline between when they open?
on
They
this-
recommend in 2-week increments. And if you're hearing about other schools, secondary is very difficult. The cohorting with the multiple subjects is making it extremely challenging, and so it's just a whole different set of expectations with staff and students as we bring them back. And so we're following the guidance. We're getting them back as quickly as we can. When we moved out the March 1st date, we also moved every date that followed it in the same sequence, which is what other districts are doing as well. And so it's just, it's going to be even challenging to get them back in at the rate that we have them scheduled to get back.
Yep. I know you said it twice, but will you say it one more time? Where is that at about the K1 returning first and then the older?
It's the metrics chart, the red,
Metrics
green,
chart.
yellow. Yep.
Okay.
Down at the bottom, it'll show, and I don't have it available to pull up right here. Down at the bottom, it'll show the descriptions for each of those levels, what can be brought back, whether it's in in-person, hybrid, or CDL. And as you get further to the left where it's green, it becomes, full in-person.
But again, those are now, to be clear, those are now recommendations.
The metrics are advisory.
Yeah, and how we march through from opening up elementary to the higher levels, that's recommendations, advisory, however you want to put it, but it's up to us as a district when we do that.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Any other questions now before we have it as a discussion item later?
No, I want to hear some of the community input, but I'll have a lot of other stuff, I think.
Thank you, Greg, for the question, and Rod for the comment. Moving on to district technology report from Scott May.
Oops, come on. Good evening. Every year we do a technology report about this same time of the year. And I always like to start off with some basic numbers to kind of give a little bit of perspective. We currently have 143 desktops in the district, and that's a reduction of 7%. We've reduced some computer labs due to lack of need or other needs for the space. We have 379 laptops, which is a 13% reduction. That's due to moving more to Chromebooks. Chromebooks, we have 942 in our district. That's a 72% increase. We do have about 35 of those that are going out here in the next few weeks because they're old and they're out of date. It's time. We also have 120 of the Verizon Jetpacks for cellular data for those families that do not have internet connectivity at their homes. We have had a number of different projects going on over the past year. A couple of the big ones, we are adding TV displays throughout the district in classrooms, 65-inch displays. This is to eliminate the need to use the desktop projectors. Those desktop projectors, because they sit on a tabletop, they take up the space that a student could have. So by doing that, we can increase the spacing for students. That's a project I'm currently working on right now. We just got the displays in and I'm going through the process of mounting them. We are in the process of, we should be nearly complete of increasing our internet connectivity bandwidth from 200 megabits per second up to 500 in preparation for the hybrid learning, to make sure that we have enough capacity in district to manage it. Down at St. Mary's, we've installed a fiber connection to a new switch down at the gym hall end. That allowed us to put wireless access points in the gym and to add some to the band room and room 16 in preparation for hybrid learning. We've increased the number of wireless access points throughout the building from 15 to 20. And I'm trying to work on installing some more down the south hallway where the kinders are going to be. The middle school, we changed out the copper wire connection between the different pods to fiber this last summer using E-rate federal monies to help us do that. So each pod is interconnected with fiber connections, which has made a big difference. We've also increased the number of wireless access points from 16 to 22. I've added more in the cafeteria. We've added more in the gym. We've added out in the band room to make sure it's got good coverage. And we're in process right now of adding 2 more into the library so that those spaces can be used. I've targeted the large spaces, and then we'll add a few here and there as needed. But the middle school is in pretty good shape. The high school, we've added wireless connectivity out to the grandstand and to the gym. We've had the installation of the Pixelot camera system for athletic events at the grandstand and in the gym. And we've increased the number of wireless access points from 18 to 24 in that location. We're gathering all the necessary equipment for the live streaming. Those orders are coming in now, and once they're in, then we'll work on getting them out to the buildings to get to the teachers, along with information on how to use it and how it all works. Chromebook repairs is a continuous issue. Most common repairs we've been having are broken screens, bad video cables, and camera failures. The bad video cables and camera failures, that's just wear and tear, open, close type thing. The broken screens, that's usually from mishaps or in a few cases, just abuse. I'm still trying to get the Tech Bytes quarterly newsletter out to all district staff. It's been a little odd this year, of course, for obvious reasons. We've consolidated our email into the MASD 91 account. So that's the Google account. We're going to be finishing up some of that transition here in the, throughout the rest of this school year. The original plan was that we would have wrapped it up in the fall, with everybody being here, but because not everybody's in, it became rather unrealistic at that point. But that progress has been pretty solid there. We are working on reconfiguring our wireless. So those of you who come into the district have been used to the MASD as an open network. We're going to maintain that for our community when they come in for meetings and just coming into the building and such. But we're also creating a couple other breakouts. So we'll have a student section, a staff section, that guests and personal cell phones will be on the guest network. And that will allow us to reduce the bandwidth on that side if we have to increase the bandwidth for things like state testing and for student and staff devices. Other than that, it's like everything else right now, it's been very busy. It's getting much busier with all the equipment coming in. I've been working closely with the buildings on making sure that they're in good shape and they have what they need, and trying to get Chromebooks repaired and out as quickly as we can. And that's been going fairly well. Sometimes my delay is getting parts in. But other than that, things are looking good. We're working on moving the initial 60 jetpacks that we ordered. Because we bought them from the device we bought from Jervis, the cellular plan is on our normal cell plan. And we're trying to get those moved over to the state contract, which will be a nice cost savings. So that's just a real slow process with Verizon for some reason. That's really about it. If you have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer them or take down some notes and get back to you.
Thank you, Scott. Do any board members have questions or comments for Scott?
Hey, Scott, what's the, as the kids start coming back, what's your biggest fear about what's going to break for us?
Devices being dropped and trying to get them fixed even quicker. Because we have quite a few students who are using their own devices at home, which has meant that I've got a little bit of a surplus so that I can have devices ready where they just exchange and I can have a little bit of time to fix them. Speeding that up, and even, you know, increasing our bandwidth to 500. There's still a lot of questions. I was talking with the tech director in Silver Falls, and they've increased theirs, and they're not there. Everybody's questioning, God, do we have enough? Do we have enough? Because this is uncharted territory with this much video usage and this much access. Like down at St. Mary's past years, you have the kindergarten classrooms and some of the first grade classrooms had like 6 or 7 laptops in the back of the room. The kids would go work on different things, but you didn't have kids on devices all the time. The high school was 1-to-1, so we had, you know, many more up there. So I'm feeling pretty good with the increased bandwidth that we'll be able to keep up with that. And just the unknown.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Rod. Any other questions for Scott? Thank you, and gosh, stick with it. It's going to be a lot coming at you. So good luck, and I know you'll do well. Thank you, Scott.
And you just roll with the punches. It's like when I was teaching in middle school.
All right, moving on to our sports activities report. Is that Mr. Peterson and not Mr. Moffitt? Oh, there's Mr. Moffitt. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Hey, Kevin, are you sharing or am I sharing?
I can share, I think.
Okay.
Is that Sharon?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for having me, board. Appreciate it. I think we got a little bit of good news coming. The sports stuff is changing daily. Sometimes I'm having a little trouble wrapping my head around it because it's changing so fast, but it's changing in the positive direction. So that's good news, and we'll roll with it if it does that. I'm going to go through kind of what we're doing right now, some schedules that we've kind of started getting going with, and then some general timelines, and then some of the state guidance. And you guys can stop me at any point, board, ask questions or wait till you're done, but jump in whenever you need. If something looks a little bit odd, feel free. Currently, this is what we got going here. Just got started last week, and with OHA clearing us to be indoors, even in extreme counties, it's kind of a win. Our numbers are coming down, but still fairly high, but we do get to be indoors a little bit. But we're trying to get all our kids involved that we can. Football actually has officially started practice today. They're going from 4 to 5:30 every day. It's a conditioning week only, no protective equipment or anything like that, but it takes a little while to get football up to speed on those things, and we haven't been doing it for a while, so they're getting a little extra time there. Baseball doing a little bit in the cage Tuesdays and Thursdays. Cross country this week, going Monday through Wednesday. Not going to go Thursday if it's snowing and 26 out. It's a little bit tough run, but volleyball, 2 sessions, Monday through Thursday. First session, and you see 3 to 3:45, second session 4 to 4:45. They can only be 45-minute sessions maximum, and they can only have 6 kids. That's the requirements from the state, along with social distancing and other stuff, but that's why we break to 2 there. Softball's Monday, Wednesday, 4 to 4:45, and then basketball, wrestling, swimming. We're going to get those going as we go here, trying to kind of slow play it in, and then hopefully we've got all that going. Obviously, some of them have different issues with the regulations that are tough to work with, but we're going to do our best to make sure everybody's getting a shot. If you haven't seen this, this is the K-12 school sports guidance, and it talks about what's considered a non-contact sport, what's considered a minimal and medium contact sport, and what's considered a full contact sport. The key with the full contact sports is, as of right now, those aren't allowed. We're going to get new guidance this week, it sounds like. I'm crossing my fingers that it's going to be positive. But there are some changes coming, OSA said today. Right now, though, that's one of the reasons it's conditioning only. We can't wrestle, can't play basketball contests, things of that nature. The minimal and medium contact sport, those ones, you can participate now if it's outdoors. You could practice or you could play a game. Volleyball, because we're in an extreme county, we cannot play in a game yet, but we can work out inside. And hopefully that number keeps on coming down. And soon enough, we'll be in the next category, maybe be able to play the games on time when we're supposed to start. And then cross country right now, you see over there for a fall sport, we can be doing that right now. There's a rule where we can only go with 2 teams for a meet. So that would look a little different compared to what, if you've ever been up to the Oktoberfest meet at Silver Falls, where there's 570 kids or whatever. Coach could help me on that, but it might look a little different. And those guidances are changing too, but some sports we can get going a little more. Some are going to maybe take a little more time, but we're working with that. Here's a little timeline. Week of 2-8, official football practice could begin, only conditioning. And then again, hopefully we have some guidance from the state that changes this week. Next week, again, football continues practicing. If the state doesn't change their stance on full contact sport and the rules stay the same, then we will be offering a 7-on-7 football league, and we'll do some other things. We're not going to let those guys go without a sport. And the rest of the league has agreed to do that as well. And then the week of 2/22, football continues practice, cross country, volleyball all start. And hopefully by then, like I said, the metrics come down to the point where our volleyball is able to go full bore. There are some things, it's heading in the right direction. It's definitely heading in the right direction, and the rules are kind of changing in our favor a little bit, I think. The week of 3/1, we begin our competitions. And then the final week of season 2 is, April 5th. And the culminating week, we don't quite know what that looks like yet. It may be a league tourney for volleyball. It might be like a regional crossover game for football. It hasn't quite, OSA has not decided what that's going to look like yet. We have a good football game scheduled if we can get to that point. So I'm hoping that we'll be there. This is the guidance that we're having to follow based on county risk level. And you guys can see it on there, but when you're in extreme risk county, you're not allowed to do the contact sports, the full contact, football, basketball, wrestling, but minimal and medium and non-contact sports can practice and compete. Competitions not involving more than 2 schools, which is where the cross country, the big event is not approved yet, but could get there. You see outdoor capacity, maximum 50 people. Where we can work out now is indoor establishments, greater than 500 square feet, like the gym. Limit to 6 students in each group. Coach with them. Coach has to stay 25 feet away, only 45 minutes total. Lots of little ins and outs and sanitizing things that go along with that. That's extreme. If we get down to high risk, minimal, medium, and non-contact sports may practice and compete. So volleyball would be going. We wouldn't be doing like the tri-ways as we have in the past, where you have 3 schools come into a gym on one night and play. At high risk counties, and this is where the rules from the state will have to change a little bit, because full contact sports Still not allowed to get after it like that. But as I said, OSA is pretty sure that we're going to have some new guidance in the next week to 9 days by February 17th. I think they're going to make that final decision for sure. But and there you see outdoor capacity, maximum 75 people. Indoor capacity, it gets pretty tight if we get to this point. That's, I think Mr. May mentioned the Pixelot cameras. We have the Booster Club generously got us cameras that you can actually stream the games from home if there's not enough, not very many people allowed to the games, and you can actually stream the road games, and you can actually stream other teams' games, even if we're not playing, if they have the Pixelot camera, and a lot of schools went to that. So if we can get there, while we might not have a bunch of people in the gym watching yet, kids will be playing and people could watch, and then it continues to go down into the medium risk, your capacity for outdoor events and indoor grows a little bit. Again, we have a pretty good following of fans, so we'll be close on those numbers. And then the lower risk counties gets bigger even yet. So kind of the main takeaways, and I was hoping I would have football information a little more for you. The OHA and OSA met today, and they did not make a call on the full contact sports, but that is coming. And like I said, I'm excited that we are able to do some indoor stuff and get kids just back up here and give them some opportunities. I think that they are definitely kind of craving that. And all our coaches are following the guidelines as before and even stricter now. And I think we'll get the other sports. We'll have every sport going here within 2 weeks and give everybody a shot. So happy to answer any questions on any of the slides or any clarification that need to be made here.
Thank you, Kevin. Do you want to maybe stop sharing your screen?
You bet.
And if any board members have questions or comments for Kevin at this time, now's the time.
So just to clarify again, so the volleyball players are practicing in small groups in our gym
Yeah.
currently. Okay.
That'd be six people in the gym at a time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Max. Yes. Max of 6, and then 15-minute break while we sanitize, and then another group of 6.
Okay.
But yeah, no more than 6. And the same actually goes for the batting cage. That's got to be a 6-person because it's only got one open air side. So,
what's your on the full contact sports? Do you think that stuff? Well, I guess on all the sports. Do you think they're going to keep it with the county basis like it is right now? Because we're in a pretty bad county, or do you think they're going to do something more statewide?
That's a great question. There is talk about, like for volleyball, they did say at the meeting today, you could choose to move the season to the May-June area if you want to take a chance with that. But that seems like a tough move for small schools to start pairing sports against each other. I think that, yeah, it's a good question. I think county metrics will probably play a role in it. So I hope we keep on spiraling down a little bit. And as the vaccines keep rolling out, I think the numbers are going the right way. Whether or not they get there quick enough, I don't know. But yeah, I think
it will be some counties open and some not.
I think it could. Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I have a question.
You bet.
The question, Kevin, is there a technique that you guys have been able to come up with where people would be able to garner a letter or that level of recognition out of this year? A lot of those people have family tradition, personal goal of lettering every year, or at least in their senior year. And this is an unusual year, but it seems that there should be something that we could put together. And I know we got a couple of people that are interested in sports here. And I'd just like to think that we might be able to run something on that. And I know that's it's got to be completely new.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good idea. Just from my personal standpoint, I've got guys who would probably own all the records at Kennedy High School had they got to play all 4 years of their career. So they definitely have missed out on a lot of opportunities and those types of things. So I think for sure we'll figure that out, and I'll sit with the coaches. And that's a very good point and something that we need to address for sure. I have not thought about that yet, but it needs to be considered.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody else have questions or comments for Kevin?
I have a question for you, Sherry.
Yeah.
Because I know we've discussed this in the past and the board has had some disagreements as to what we would allow or not allow based on in-person learning and CDL learning. Do we need a motion or do we need a consensus that the board agrees that we will allow the students to return to extracurricular activities as OHA sector guidance and OSA K-12 guidance allows?
That is a great question. And Troy, what do you think?
We've been asking this of legal counsel because, in the past, school board has never been involved in making decisions about instructional methods or instructional models. And so to make that decision now as a board puts us in a position where any further decisions made moving forward would also require board action to change it. And there wouldn't be flexibility of making changes within the model without board action. Similar to approving board policy or board ARs, and they couldn't be changed internally without board action moving forward.
Yeah, and I think what Greg's getting at is that you have requested that the board weigh in previously on specifically returning to athletics and co-curricular activities indoors. And we have been taking the stance, and for those who haven't been tracking, we've been taking the stance so far that we were hesitant to support in building indoor activities for athletics while our kids aren't in the facilities learning. And so this is a bit of a switch, although we do have limited in-person instruction happening in all 3 buildings. So we do have students in the buildings now. So, it's a good question, Greg. I think it wouldn't hurt just to show our support if we want to just maybe not vote, but maybe take a poll if you're supportive of the plan as it's been laid out by Kevin to return, volleyball to the gym and other activities indoors as space and guidelines allow. What do we all think?
I would be in agreement with doing that.
And Rod, you have yourself unmuted?
Oh, I just muted myself.
Oh.
I think that because we're on a trajectory to get the kids in the buildings, that I'm okay with the level that we're talking about here. Yeah, I am.
Okay, so Rod is supportive. Greg, are you supportive, did you say?
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
And Teresa?
Yes.
And I am supportive as well. So not a vote, but a consensus of support for the plan as we heard tonight. So thank you all very much. And thanks for the question, Greg. Any other questions? Troy, did you have something to say?
No, I was just thanking Kevin for the presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin.
Our intent is to implement it just as he's presented. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on. So we're going to go ahead and approve the agenda now, and we do have a change. We're going to remove item 9.3, the superintendent annual evaluation, and we're going to push that back to next month. So if someone wants to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
I second that.
I'll give that second to Rod. So John has moved and Rod has seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor. I'll just go ahead and poll everyone. Rod?
Aye.
Teresa?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
And chair is aye as well. So thank you all. And now consent items. Does anybody have anything they see that should be considered to pull out before we approve the consent items? Okay, if someone wants to go ahead and make a motion to approve the consent items as presented.
I move that we approve the consent items as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Teresa, seconded by John. Any discussion? Okay, let's take a poll. Rod?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Teresa?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
And chair is in favor as well, aye, so that one passes. And we're gonna move on to reports, and I wanna let the audience know, just a reminder that if you're interested in addressing us during the public forum phase of our meeting, that's item 7, so reports are item 6. And so to sign up to address the board, you would use chat to share your name and your address with our moderator, Jill Holland. So moving on to administrator reports.
I can get us started.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Yes, so at St. Mary's, right now we have 2 long-term substitutes who are filling in this crazy time, one for maternity leave and another for medical leave. We're very excited to have them with us, and they're a great addition to the staff. We will complete winter map testing and reading by February 16th for grades 3 through 5. I hear that the testing is going much smoother this time. It's still at a distance, so it still can be a challenge, but the kids are hanging in there and doing a great job. We have surveyed our families to determine who will return to in-person instruction. We have about 85% of our families responding so far, so we'll be following up with those last few families in the next couple of days. At this point, we have 88% of St. Mary's students that are planning on returning in person to the school building. The large majority of them. And then limited in person will actually begin for St. Mary's next week. As we were planning to bring all of our kids back in person, we needed a little bit more time to kind of get back into limited in person, and we're trying to really prioritize the students that we plan on bringing in to make it very strategic and really focus on those students that need the most in-person support as we lead into all of our kids being back in the building.
Thank you, Jasmine. And I want to correct the record. I said that all schools are in limited in-person instruction, and thank you for correcting me that the high school currently is, with plans for the middle school and St. Mary's to move that way over the next few weeks.
Yes.
Sorry about that, and thank you for correcting me. And do any board members have questions or comments for Jasmine before we move on to the middle school report?
Yeah, my question, and maybe it's for Jasmine, maybe it's for Troy, I'm not sure, but I want to make absolutely sure that we're committed to the limited in-person instruction starting next week, even if the hybrid model gets pushed out again for whatever reason. I mean, we've been linked with the limited in-person instruction to the hybrid model for 4 months too long now. I mean, we need to get these kids, the limited in-person kids in like now. And I don't want to see it hooked to, if the other kids get pushed out, the limited in-person kids we need to be more committed to them than we have been.
Well, we're going
to have the same conversation about the middle school.
I challenge the fact that we haven't been committed. And Jasmine has presented that she has a plan, and Jasmine will follow through with it. I'm completely confident that she can do that.
So Troy, I'm just going to push back on that and say that at last month's board meeting, January 11th, the limited in-person card presentation that you gave said we are ready for immediate in-person limited in-person instruction in all 3 buildings for 30 kids starting immediately. We're 4 weeks later. That's way past immediately, and we don't have it going in 2 of our 3 buildings. That's not acceptable. And I don't want it pushed out again like it's been for 6 months or 4 months. That seems like a reasonable request.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rod. Does anybody else have questions or comments for Jasmine? Okay, moving on. Mr. Tiki, Jared, go ahead.
Yeah. So middle school attendance update. I've been updating you guys based on the last time we gave attendance figures, which I believe might have been the December report. And so still staying pretty consistent around 83, 85%, kind of within there. 8th grade is showing the highest attendance rates. Remember, at secondary, we take attendance every period that students attend, both on synchronous and asynchronous days. And so tracking attendance is always a challenge, but we've done a really good job of that with our staff and our teachers and our office staff. Lippy will begin for prioritized students at MAMS on Tuesday, February 16th. We are looking to start with 3 cohorts, 1 per grade level, and our staff is eager and ready to go. And so we're going to be looking also to kind of add to that 3 additional cohorts within a short period of time after, and just making sure that we provide as many kids as possible that opportunity for limited in-person instruction. We have reached out to families and confirmed their willingness. And so right now we're just finalizing those last few details as far as transportation and some other logistics to make sure we're ready to go on the 16th. OMSI Outdoor School. You know, this was kind of one of those things where really wanted to do, you know, those in-person sites. We had 2 in-person sites scheduled, and OMSI transitioned to virtual outdoor school for 6th and 7th grade students. And so we're still going to be participating in it. It will just be in a virtual format, April 29th through May 21st. And so that is something for our 6th and 7th graders to be able to look forward to. And last but not least, we want to thank JFK Booster Club, Burger Time, and Home Place. These individual businesses and JFK Booster Club have donated multiple items to our Wolfpack Pride ticket drawings. And for those of you guys who don't remember, we have weekly assemblies, and we look to recognize students for specific themes each month. In the month of January, it was student engagement. And so students would earn tickets through their engagement in the classroom. And then weekly, we would draw prizes and be able to acknowledge the students in that work. In the month of February, it's actually office hours. So students who are coming to office hours and checking in, they're also getting acknowledged. And JFK Booster Club donated 30+ items to us. So huge, huge thanks to them. Burger Time, I couldn't be any more grateful. They donated a ton of items as well, and Home Place has stepped up and offered some discounted items to give out to students during these challenging times. I also would really like to acknowledge Miss Oropeza, our counselor. Last week was National School Counselors Week, and she is absolutely amazing at the middle school. The support that she gives our students, our staff, and our community is second to none. And so I just want to publicly be able to thank her and acknowledge her for all the hard work she puts in each and every day. And with that, that is our middle school report.
Thank you, Mr. Tiki. Do any board members have questions or comments for the middle school report?
Yeah, what are the sizes of your Lippy 3 cohorts, and what would their day look like when they come in the building?
Yeah, so the cohort sizes are around probably 7 right now in the original cohorts. And so if we were to look to add 3 more, probably a week later, we'd put them around about the same number, 5 to 7. Our goal is to not have any more than 10 in any one cohort there. And so we do have some flexibility there, and I work closely with our staff to just determine what's going to be best for students in that setting. When students arrive on campus, they're going to have separate entrances. and then separate spaces for limited in-person instruction. And so they're going to be checking in. Our staff members who will be providing support for Lippy will be checking in and meeting with teachers on Wednesdays to just get a little bit of an overview of what are the assignments and expectations that week, so they can best support the students who are coming in and needing additional academic assistance.
So each of those 7 to 10 kids would be coming in individually. It wouldn't be that 10 would be sitting in a classroom or in a gym.
They would be in their individual settings with a lead staff member.
So 1 student to 1 teacher.
No, like 7 students to 1.
7 students together with 1. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And that's why we're going to try to keep it, Greg, within grade level cohorts to just try to limit that exposure.
The number of kids. Okay.
Jared, how many
Go ahead, John.
students are in band if all 6th through 8th grade are participating?
Yeah. So we had, I want to say we had about 16 in 6th grade and 19 in 7th and 8th grade band. I understood that they were going to they may have to run that together in one of your options there. Yeah.
Is 35, is that doable? I mean, I didn't know that we did that in 1959, but I don't know that we did that.
Yeah, John, you're seeing one of my dilemmas when it comes to electives. With band in particular too, the health and safety requirements will require, special masks and just instrument covers and stuff like that. Within the current band classroom, no. That's the spacing just would not allow for that. So we would have to look at alternate spaces,
Is there
to house that many kids at the same time.
Is there such a thing on campus between maybe JFK and you that there is a possibility of that? Is there such a thing as a space?
Yeah, we can always, the gym is an option in there. And I think the real challenging part is we have 6th graders who are kind of learning those beginning, they're kind of beginning band, kind of learning the ropes and the foundation, whereas our 7th and 8th grade are more intermediate to advanced. And so kind of 2 completely different structures where it would really force us to have to try to find a good fit for 6th through 8th grade as a whole.
Well, and moving chairs and equipment and people and all, I see a dilemma, and I just wondered if, I know you've looked at it. I just was wondering what the scope of it is. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good question.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Greg. Does anybody else have questions for the middle school report? Okay, thank you, Jared, very much. Moving on to JFK, Mr. Peterson. Go ahead, Dale.
All right, thank you, Sherry. I also want to publicly acknowledge Mr. O for all the work that he does for our students. He literally is my right-hand person in the building. He wears many, many, many hats, and he has been super busy within the last couple of weeks of getting our kids full schedules for quarters 3 and 4, and is also rolling into scholarship season. So he's going to be super busy. He does wonderful work for us. He makes great relationships with kids. So thank you, Mr. O, for the work that you do for us and for our kids and our families. As we talked about earlier, we welcomed kids into our building last Thursday for the first time in roughly 11 months. And we were pretty excited to see that with 2 cohorts. Again, we're wanting to bring more kids in. So the first day was Thursday. We'll take a look at this week and see how this week goes. The cohorts again are on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Towards the end of the week, we'll do a debrief and then start reaching out to parents and kids to make sure that we can get them back in or get more kids in the following week. We'll continue to expand that, especially for our most neediest kids, those that were still having bandwidth issues or access to their classes, kids who are struggling mightily in their classes. So there's 8 criteria that we have to rank our kids, if you will. I hate to use that term, ranking, to be able to determine whether they need that level of support or not. So we're going to be looking to move pretty quickly on that. So I'm hopeful that that will please the board as far as that goes. We began our, as you heard Coach Moffitt talk about, we began our outdoor athletic workouts on Monday, our last Monday, and they become more robust. And we've got many kids that are taking advantage of those workouts. I was walking through the building today with our facilities director, Grant Henderson, happened to walk outside just before the volleyball workout was to start. And it was really nice to see kids again on campus. So looking forward to seeing more kids on campus. When we're talking about attendance rate, we took a little dip last month in attendance. So we're about 79 point, well, not about, it's exactly 79.43%. So we went down, I think last month was about 81%, 82%. We don't necessarily know why that was. So we're looking into the reason why there was a little dip. And the last thing I've got to share is ODE released their graduation data. And the weird thing about their graduation data, if you can roll back just that one more slide so I can explain how ODE does it, is it's for the class of 2019. It's not the class of 2020, which was last year. It was for the class of 2019, which would have been my first year here. So how they do this is it's for students who were first-time ninth graders during the 2015-2016 year, if that makes sense. So it seems like they're always a year behind where we would think when we hear, great, they released graduation rates and graduation rates went up to 83% statewide. I'm not sure where the news outlets are getting that number because what I see in the ODE reports is 80% is where the state average is. So if we can go to the next slide, that'd be great. So some little graphs. I realized now I'm looking at this that the very first bar graph or bar there should all be that light blue, but I've seen that they're different color blue, so my apologies. So anyway, that first bar is actually considered all students. So back in the class of 2017, our graduation rate was 76%. 2018, the class was 74%. And then in 2019, it was 79%. So it's trending up, but I'm going to say it's not where it needs to be. And I'm just going to make a statement that we've got to do better. We have to do better. I shared this information with my leadership team today. A couple teachers replied back that it's difficult to see this, when we work so hard to get kids where they need to be. So the other bars, though, we disaggregated that data into our white students, our Hispanic students, and our economically disadvantaged students. Typically, what you'd also see is the students that are receiving special education services and ELD. Our N numbers, our N size for those are so small that they don't show up in the reports. So back in 2017, you can see that our white students graduated at a rate of 87%, and our Hispanic students were at 66%, a significant gap. And then our kids, the yellow bar there is economically disadvantaged, we're 77%. Those are the students that are receiving free and reduced lunches. The next year, class of 2018, and please stop me if I'm going too fast. Sometimes I have a tendency to talk too fast. We took a big dip in 2018. Our white students graduated at a rate of 70%, and our Hispanic students were at 79%. And then economically disadvantaged were 71%. And then the data that was just recently released is we're back up again, 91% versus 76%. And then also the economically disadvantaged, 76%. Again, we typically would also see students that are receiving special needs services as well as our ELD services. I would suspect we're probably going to start seeing those categories show up in the reports because our N size is getting bigger. The last time I checked with Ms. Coons, her caseload at JFK for students that are receiving special services or special needs services is now 35, which is pretty significant. So we've got some work that we've got in front of us. And that's kind of where it's at. It's just the weird thing is how there's a delay in the reporting. So I'm open to questions, anything from the board. I'm happy to answer if I can.
Anybody have questions? questions. Dale, do you know what your calculation was for the graduation rate for the class of 2020?
I don't, because it was such a weird year, Sherry,
Yeah.
because of the pass and no pass, and there was incompletes that were involved in that. So I also would typically probably give you our 9th grade on track to graduate numbers at this point too, and that's for last year is darn near impossible because of the way the grading, not the grading system, but the way the guidance told us to work on with regards to pass versus incomplete. So those students that were, any students last year except for seniors, had this entire year to make up classes that they had incompletes in last year. So that's why we're only seeing data for just the graduation rate, and that's all.
Got it. Thank you.
You bet.
Does anybody else have questions or comments for Dale? Okay, moving on to special services. Thank you, Dale.
You're welcome.
Hey, remember in the old days when we'd have these meetings till like 10 o'clock at night? It's kind of feeling like that again, isn't it? So I have a few bullets for you. And then I have an attached report because this is my time to do my IDEA report, which you should also have in your packet. But I had to do our monitoring system, which is SPR&I, Systems Performance Review and Improvement, which there are 2 sides to that. There's our file monitoring part of it, and then there's the indicators that I report out to you for things like graduation rate, dropout rate, disproportionality, discipline, transition, just some of those other systemic indicators. But we had 6 files that were pulled. They were all at the high school, so they happened to all be from McKenna's caseload, and they were 100% accurate, which in my 7 years here, that has never happened. So a huge shout out to her. And not only is she just a phenomenal teacher, but she's also an excellent case manager. So that was really, really exciting to be able to report out to you. And I don't have to do any additional file reviews based on that. I'll do my IDEA report after this. And then we also were approved for another year for our employee wellness grant, which is incredibly exciting. Cameron Thompson has worked so hard. He's probably sick of meeting with me and OEA, but he has just worked so hard. In fact, I think we met twice today and on Friday to continue to wrap things up on that. But that's just another avenue to help support our staff in both their physical and mental wellness. So thank you, Cameron, for your work on that. I didn't put it here because it was in the slideshow, but since it seems to be a theme, our community transition program is also in limited in person, and we started at the same time as JFK. And like I said before, we will be adding additional students next week. In general, all staff will be receiving training from our nurses as we continue to prepare for expanding in-person instruction, including more limited in person at secondary level and our full hybrid at the elementary. They received a rather lengthy video. It was like 45 minutes or something like that. And then we have some follow-up Q&A sessions with our nurses both this Wednesday as in addition to next Wednesday. And then for our people who will be doing the rapid on-site testing, we have that scheduled for the last week of February as well, to just not only are they doing the online training modules, but then doing some just hands-on training with our nurses as well. So we have a great nursing crew. And then just a general shout out, we have great counselors. We are just really lucky that we have a cohesive team. I'd be happy to answer, before I move into my IDEA report, any other just general questions on limited in person, because that seems to be a topic tonight. I'd be happy to answer questions on that.
So
I knew you were coming around.
I didn't know that. Does all of the limited person to all of the buildings flow through you?
No, it doesn't like necessarily flow through me. But we do have teams, and so all of us are following the same criteria so that it's a consistent process. I think I spoke about it, maybe not at the board meeting, but at our family forums, to make sure that it's a non-discrimination process so that we are sure to not base it on like disability, race, ethnicity, language, that sort of thing. And then I definitely am like poring over the guidance on a regular basis and attending the larger level meetings, and then coming back so that we have a flow through process for that to really, you know, understand and make sure that we are in alignment with our SSL. So I think I'm just, you know, I'm a good like go-to person. I think if people have, you know, some questions, you know, Troy has his like really big, you know, superintendent hat, and I have, you know, a little bit lower level like detail on some of those pieces.
But you're working with each one of the building administrators on making sure they're identifying the right kids and how they're going to bring them in and stuff like that.
Yep, and then creating the forms. So they're all using the same form as far as their team meetings and so forth. Making sure that everybody, again, we're using a consistent district-wide process for identifying those students. And we meet every week as an admin team too, to just come together and those timelines. And I do want to add, we kind of going back to like those advisory metrics. So limited in person can happen when we're in like the red, because limited in person is a part of CDL. So we can continue to do that. And one of the really great things about limited in person is, you know, the students can then kind of, I think it's Jasmine's words, like poke holes at our processes, right? They can show us what's working, what's not working before we have, you know, 100 students right there to be able to show us what we can improve upon. And if you look at the metrics, it's really clear as you kind of work your way from right to left. That's kind of how we're operating, right? Because we have been in red, but our numbers are starting to look really great, which is exciting. But it's at that bottom there that we really need to, it says that we need to do the careful phasing in of hybrid. And I think it was you, perhaps it was Greg, asking about, well, why don't we just start everybody? And we just, it says how we need to do the careful phasing in. But there isn't, I think you had also asked like, well, who sets the timeline for that? And we definitely set the timeline for that, but we do want to be careful that we're not just like throwing everybody in and then we have an exposure and we have to send people back to CDL, which would be really hard for parents.
Yeah, my big concerns has really been around the limited in-person stuff and just make it, you know, I'm just going to keep jumping up and down and trying to make that go as fast as we can make it go.
Yeah. Which is
I don't think I asked it like that. So. Like
what, Greg?
Like how she phrased it is, I don't believe I used that kind of tone.
I'm sorry.
She might have meant me, because I probably did.
She said my name, but I don't think I used that kind of tone when I asked that question. So I don't really appreciate that.
I'm not sure what I said. I'm sorry.
Well, and I would just get us back on the report at hand. We're going to have a lot of discussion about returning in person more broadly on our agenda later on. Any other questions on special services before we get to the IDA report? Okay, go ahead, Erica.
I'm trying to find how to share it, but it's not. There we go. So I did leave all of the historical data in here for the top part of it, as far as like how the students that we have claimed has expanded over the years that I've been here. But because it's just gotten kind of long, I did take out the years kind of in between here. And so you can see at least from 14-15, that initial increase. And then I left like 1 year all the way to here as far as a percent of increase in students for special education. So from, this is at least when I started in 14-15 to now, we've had almost a 33% increase in serving students in special education. And then my note here for this year to just, I think, speak to part of that is that our district enrollment has decreased. So starting here says that our overall, our district has seen a decrease of 72 students, but we actually, if you see up here, we've actually seen an increase of 5 students for special education. And so obviously that's going to skew our data. I think as we see an increase in our enrollment for general education, that percentage will drop. These are just the same reminders as before, that our districts are capped at 11% for twice basic school funding, and we're currently at 13.5. So we're a little bit off with things with that drop in enrollment. We do have fewer kids out of district or high cost than we have had in the past. So that is, from a budget standpoint, that's a good thing. Next year, based on like who's moving up, how many kids I have aging out of CTP, and how many kids I have incoming for kindergarten, I would project 97. And for now, our social learning classroom is currently on hold, just given, you know, the things that we are working on with COVID. I mean, and we just wouldn't have the space to do a program like that.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have questions or comments on the IDA report for Erica?
Just a comment or a question on the enrollment. So we're down about 10%. Is that from this, like the same time last year? Because that's about 10% in enrollment.
Yeah, I was comparing it to my report last year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rod. Anybody else have questions or comments for Erica? Okay, let's move on to the superintendent's report. Troy, go ahead. Troy, you're muted.
First of all, we're working on, as I shared last month, we established an oversight committee for the CARES funds, or the federal stimulus dollars that we're receiving. As a reminder, this funds that we received in June for the CDL grant, or the GEAR grant as they referred to it as, $145,000 even. And for the ESSER fund, or the Elementary and Secondary School Relief Fund, we had $82,547. We still have not heard about the CDL grant allocations yet, but we did hear about our ESSER funds, and they were right on. We were predicted to receive 4 times the amount as we received in June, and that $324,620 is right on for 4 times that 82,000 number. And again, these funds can be used through September of 23, and we have a committee that is working on that at the district level. In your packet, I've provided the full report that we received from ODE regarding Division 22 corrections for the past 2 years. The areas that are identified in there are the human sexuality, education, comprehensive school counseling, which we have our counselors developing a comprehensive plan that'll be finished in June, and career education at some of the levels in our buildings, and then media programs at the high school. As promised last month, you now have the contracts in your board packet for the seismic contracts for the seismic assessments, the long-range facility plan, and the facilities assessment for each of those contractors. And the radon and lead was awarded much earlier in the year, and they've just completed their lead testing. There's some ongoing retesting for radon, and those results should be posted to our website soon. We referred to the vaccinations earlier. We were fortunate to be able to coordinate a vaccination clinic with our local fire department through the assistance of Jim Treeweiler and Vic Hofer and staff. We really appreciate the time that they put in to make sure that our staff got access to the vaccine. We're scheduled for our second dose on February 19th. About 50% of our staff have received the vaccine, and all staff have had access to it who would like to have that vaccine. Update on the Willamette Career Academy. This is the regional CTE program that component districts of Willamette ESD are able to join. Again, I serve on the subcommittee, and they're in the planning processes to be available for fall instruction, fall of 2021. And the three programs that'll be offered are cosmetology, diesel technology, and health services. In this initial year, our district has the option of accessing 8 slots or sending 8 students to that program for half days to participate in very specific programs related to those 3 areas. In the following year, the 22-23 school year, we will have access to about 15 slots. And again, I believe they're AM and PM, planning for AM or PM sessions at this time. Mr. Peterson has added these 3 courses into his curriculum handbook, and they're going to be forecasting them for those courses whenever they start forecasting next month. As a reminder, this is a facility that's down on South Lancaster and Salem. This is where the old Toys R Us building used to be. They are in the process of remodeling this building, expected to be completely furnished and ready to go about mid-April. And I'd like to invite the board to go on a tour of this facility. They're providing tours every Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock, or by special appointment if we arrange in advance. I'd be happy to take you through the facility. Again, Diesel Technology, they're partnering with Chemeketa. This is obviously a training ground for potential students to go through the program at Chemeketa. So great opportunity that a lot of schools are not able to provide these opportunities with their especially small rural schools like Mount Angel School District, because it takes a lot of resources to build these programs, and staffing for them are also very difficult to find. Health services, just the rough view of the labs. They're going to have independent labs within this facility with interactive machines to help with the teaching and monitoring for all health services. And then cosmetology, which is one of the highest requested programs in our area based on Salem Kaiser's CTEC programs, which are extremely popular, and they just get a lot of students that are interested in the cosmetology field. So another great opportunity that we just can't provide here at Mount Angel. Then the 3 programs to look forward to are manufacturing technology in all areas of manufacturing, computer science and information technology, and construction technology, which some of these courses we offer in their entry level at Kennedy High School. So this would be a great opportunity for kids to advance their skills by accessing this program in Salem. That's all I had.
Troy, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the question was, you said you had access for people to do the COVID testing. It sounded like 40% did not test. Was that by choice do you have people that are choosing not to test?
We do. We have a combination. So there's some folks who are choosing not to test. There are several who have had the COVID virus, and so their doctors recommended that they wait a certain number of days, so they were not eligible to take it.
Good.
And then also there are some staff who have accessed getting a vaccination at a different site, and we don't have all responses from all staff, but we know that we're a little over 50%, which is fairly consistent with surrounding districts as well.
And John, just to clarify, you were talking about getting the vaccine, not getting tested, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that that's what you meant, because that's what I
So
was
Troy,
thinking.
is it a personal decision by staff that I don't want to test, and then you just they continue to go on, or is the school have any kind of a signature thing that you have to do to say, no, I'm not going to do that?
No, that's a personal decision. There's no requirements for testing or for vaccinations. The only difference for vaccinations, those who do receive a vaccination, is through the screening and process with our nursing staff. It will make a difference on the length of quarantines for those who have the vaccine versus those who have not. But no, there is no requirement to be vaccinated.
Thank you.
Troy, are we taking that off the table? Because I mean, there's similar uptake problems in a lot of places, and I know there are some places that are, and I don't know about schools, but there are some places that are requiring vaccination. So it's not that we can't do that, and I'm not suggesting that we do that, but are we taking that option off the table?
It is not being discussed at the state level at all.
Pardon me?
It has not been discussed at the state level at all.
Okay.
I'm not even aware if we can actually do that, but I can find out.
I'd like to work on the things that we need to work on.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Rod. And when we get to the approval of the MOU, there's language in there about that very thing, so we can pay attention there as well. Any other questions or comments for Troy? All right, thank you for your report. Do any board members have reports for the good of the order? I just want to make a quick, short statement to the public out there. I owe a few email responses, and I apologize for my delay. And just for your awareness, when we do get questions or comments that require follow-up and follow-through, if they include Troy in the email, the board has decided to let Troy take the lead and respond. When emails and questions are sent to the board alone, it's up to the board chair to reply and respond. So that's me. And so I do know that I have a couple that I owe you responses for. So I just wanted to say that quickly during the board reports that I'm working on it. I just haven't pressed send yet. So that said, let's move on to the public forum part of our meeting. And I do read a formal description here. And if you do want to sign up to address the board during this time, we do have a few people who have signed up already, but use the chat to let Jill, our moderator, know that you'd like to address the board at this time, and include your name and address. So individual comments limited to 3 minutes. If more time is required, please submit comments or questions in writing. At this time, members of the public are invited to present concerns to the board. Speakers may offer objective criticism of school operations and programs, but the board will not hear complaints concerning individual school personnel. The chairperson will direct complaints to the appropriate means for board consideration and disposition of legitimate complaints involving students. I am going to be pretty mindful of the 3-minute limit. And at this time, the normal protocol is for you to address us for 3 minutes. And then after everyone's done, we'll open it up. And if the board wants to comment on what they've heard, we can. If you're asking specific questions, I am not in a position likely to answer them. And so we would follow up probably after and get that question answered after the meeting, unless somebody in the meeting knows for sure the answer. But I'd rather wait and give you accurate information to any questions that you raise rather than try to answer something and give you misinformation. So that said, I do want to let you know who is signed up and the order that I'm going to call people. So it's up to you when your turn is up. If you want to unmute your video, you sure can. Definitely you'll be able to unmute your sound and address us. And again, you're going to be limited to 3 minutes. And the order that I have is Tony Astorga, Tony Roof, Stephanie Brendan, Kelly Monroe, Lucy Astorga, and Sarah Byer. Those are the order of who's signed up currently. So let's go ahead and start with Tony Astorga. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself. And once you start speaking, I will start the 3-minute timer.
Hi, yes, good evening, board members and esteemed Troy and school staff. For almost a year now, we have been in distance learning. Our children have put up with everything you guys have thrown at them with grace, and I would say a certain tenacity. What I don't get is why some of this feelings have not been reciprocated by the school board and by the staff. Let me rephrase that. Why haven't I felt as a parent and my children felt that the school staff and the school board given 110% of their time, energy, and of course, their knowledge to bringing our kids back in school? I know that the governor has a lot to do with it, but also you guys have had a seat at the table to bring our children back into school. And to me, this is unacceptable. And the reason why we've lost so many children is because they've gone to the private schools where they don't accept any government money. And for some reason, they have made it work. Why can't we make it work when we have $10,000 allotted per student to get things done? $10,000 where a private school only gets about $5,000 to $6,000 per student. Where is my tax money going to being spent to keep my kids out of school, out of a school that I pay good money, out of my hard-earned money? I am tired, and I'm sorry if I'm coming off as frustrated, but I am tired of being told that my kids cannot go to a school, a building that I am paying for with my own blood, sweat, and tears, and losing the sleep because I work night shift to be home for them to be on a computer while I'm working on minimum about 3 hours of sleep almost every week. This to me cannot go. This cannot stand. I'm hoping and praying that the sooner we can get our kids into school, the better off we'll be. And I hope and pray that we can start by getting the high schoolers and middle schoolers in the same day our elementary schools. I understand that it's an advisory, and I hope that that advisory can be slid to the side and said, no, this is something that we're going to do now for our kids. You know, slip the advisory aside and say, let's get you in now. Because all across the United States, kids have been in school.
You're at your 3 minutes.
All right.
Thank you so much for taking the time to address us tonight. And moving on to Tony Roof, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, and I'll start the clock once you start speaking.
Okay. Hi, good evening, everyone. I would just like to begin by saying that I do appreciate the dedication of all of the teachers in our district and all of my kids as teachers. With that note, I have a 7th grader and I have a 4th grader, and this fall I will have a kindergartner. And I would just like to say that for our family, in our experience, distance learning is a disaster. It is not how my kids and other students should be learning. In spite of what some say, I and many others will continue to advocate for our kids. I will continue to bombard the inboxes of admins because I want what's best for kids, and it's my job as a parent to be their voice. There is no reason for kids to not be in school. This is awful, and they need to be in school. So let's get all kids back in school as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony, for taking the time to address us tonight. Let's see, who is next? We have Stephanie Brendan. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, and once you start speaking, I will start the clock.
Okay, thanks, Sherry. Good evening, school board, staff, and employees of Mount Angel School District. Last November, we were told that kids would start limited in-person instruction in December, and that didn't happen. In December, we were told that kids would start hybrid in February, and that didn't happen. We are now set to start March 1st. This time it must happen, and we will not stop pushing until our children are back in full time. It has been a year since our children have seen a classroom, yet studies show children are not super spreaders. Studies show they are not the vulnerable population, and even the CDC states they should return to the classroom. I would like to ask a question. Do you have anyone in the district advocating at the government level? This is where the changes need to happen to get our kids back in full time. As we all know, this is where it started. I will leave you with the following. I, as a parent, will not be teaching after this year. Our children are struggling greatly with distance learning, and we cannot continue like this. I would like to add that us parents that have been speaking up are speaking up for the majority. And we are aware of the guidelines and numerous hurdles the schools are required to follow. However, please understand we are only speaking up because we care about our kids and their education. I would like to thank all of our teachers for everything they're doing. They are doing an amazing job, but we still need our kids back in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for taking the time to address us tonight. We appreciate it. Next up is Kelly Monroe. If you want to go ahead and unmute, and I will start the timer once you start speaking.
Good evening, school board members, Superintendent Stoops, and Mount Angel School District staff. CDL has not been ideal for my children nor for my family. Virtual home visits are hardly worth my time. In fact, I didn't schedule one for either child this past week, which I only knew about due to a secretary calling me. It's hard to feel like anyone wants to communicate with me. I hardly know who to contact for my middle schooler. He has had so many different teachers this year. In fact, just today he was informed of yet another teacher change, which was the only teacher he had had the entire year. My middle schooler has struggled the most. His grades say he is doing well, but that is only part of the picture. He has trouble focusing on schoolwork due to the return of his concussion symptoms that had been gone when he was in person. Online school is hard when it makes your ears ring, when you get vertigo, when it makes you nauseated, and a headache that makes the screen blurry. He reports being more sad than he has ever been before, and he has had at least one friend start hurting themselves during the school year. He says his friends often seem sad. He's had trouble sleeping due to the return of his concussion symptoms and increased screen time. He says he doesn't feel like all of his teachers support him, and it's hard to develop a relationship with a teacher when they're changed all the time. Did administration and the teachers think about the effects of increased screen time on the children? Was any planning done to try and limit screen time for the children? And why are we asking kids to do things that we know scientifically are bad for them? I worry about the mass exit of families from MASD. There are already many fractures in our once strong-knit community. Why can't we offer people a choice? I hear often that one-size-fits-all approaches don't work, yet that's currently what we have. Why can't we get those that want to return to school back and those that want to stay at home to continue at home? I would be lying if I told you I wasn't contemplating moving my children out of district for the next school year. They cannot do CDL again, and I will not ask or force them to. I am lucky that I have the resources to even consider that. So what does that mean for those without the resources? That they get what they get? COVID will not be gone by next fall, so what's the plan? Families want to know and deserve time to weigh their options. Their kids deserve better. We as a society have asked many professionals to step up and to go back to work when we didn't know what that meant or what it would look like. I know how it feels. My husband and I are both nurses who have worked this entire time. We have multiple scientific studies showing opening schools with mitigating measures works both nationally and internationally. Follow the science, right? I'm asking no more of the school board, the administration, or the teachers than what is asked of all other workers. I'm asking you to step up, to figure it out, and to fight for those students who need to be in person, both here in our district and at the government level. And I'm asking for my children's lives and voices to matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly, for taking the time to talk with us tonight. And next we have Lucy Astorga. Lucy, if you want to go ahead and unmute, I will start the timer once you start speaking.
Lucy Astorga, PO Box 288, Mount Angel, Oregon 97362. Good evening. I wrote a letter to the board and superintendent, but because it would take more than 3 minutes to read, I emailed it to you instead. I would appreciate an individual response from each of you acknowledging that you received it and read it. If you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to me by email. Please don't hate me when you read it. I wrote it after a long day of distance learning next to my son, and my emotions were raw. Thank you for rearranging the meeting agenda to allow for public comment after the presentations. Because of this, many of my questions have already been answered. At the January board meeting, the superintendent announced that kindergarten and first grade would return in person on February 1st. Then it became first. What state requirement forced that change? At the same meeting, and was presented regarding when the other grades would. The question was asked why grades were spread out every 2 weeks for return. I don't feel that question was sufficiently answered because many parents still have that question. Why is everything pushed out so far? Where is the requirement that K through 5 has to go back before 6th grade, even if they're in a different building? Why can't the grades return weekly as opposed to every 2 weeks? What is the reasoning for having the middle school and high school sit empty for another month while the elementary school starts bringing students back? Thank you for acknowledging the lack of communication to parents. It has been very disappointing and frustrating. Anytime our kids' best interest comes into question, emotions can run high. The superintendent was able to express the frustrations on staff's end, and I think parents want that chance too. The day after the January Family Forum, the district posted on Facebook about the impressive number of families who had participated. When parents started asking questions on the post, they didn't get answered during the forum, the post was removed. That doesn't sound like transparency to me. That was the perfect opportunity to reach out to parents and build community relationships and trust. I don't know what the reasoning for it was, and I hate to make assumptions. But whatever it is, it's leading to a loss of support and trust for the district and its leaders. I would much rather receive constant communication subject to change than hear nothing at all. Maybe that's why some parents got the impression that the district isn't advocating properly for their children. If there are continual complaints or concerns being brought forth by parents, maybe that's an indication that there's room for more improvement. Any leader is going to be subject to extra scrutiny. Based on Troy's presentation early in this meeting, I feel like I'm being admonished for asking questions, voicing my concerns, and persistently advocating for my children. I feel it was disrespectful to parents who have done this, even with kindness, and it was not appreciated. This is a small town. I once felt it was a close-knit community, and now I feel it's hanging on by a thread. Instead of getting creative and modifying to meet our unique needs, the reactionary wait-and-see approach the district seems to have adopted is leaving every student behind. Please find a way to have them back in the classroom by the end of March. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lucy, very much for taking the time to address us tonight. And next, so we've got a couple additions. So Sarah Byer, you're next. And then after Sarah, we're going to hear from Rose Garcia and then Shayna Shecker. So Sarah, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, I'll start the timer once you start speaking.
Hello, thank you. I was not planning on speaking this evening, so I don't have anything prepared, but I'm speaking both as a parent and as a teacher. I don't teach in this school district. I teach in the Silverton School District. And I started this school year with 3 students in the Mount Angel School District. I graduated from Kennedy, as did my parents and my sisters, and we bleed red, white, and blue. We are loyal to this school district. We volunteer. We love this community. And it has broken my heart to see what my kids have gone through this year. And as a teacher, I understand that the restrictions are awful. I've read the 91-page document. I've dealt with it as a teacher, trying to plan Lippy groups, but I do know that there's more that could have been done. I am a Title I reading specialist, and I immediately started working with the admin at my school in Silver Falls with specialists and admin, trying to get kids back in the building as soon as possible, because we saw how they were struggling. We saw kids that wouldn't turn their video on. We saw kids we were worried about as far as abuse and neglect. DHS calls are down 60% last time I checked, and that was before Christmas. We're worried about our kids, and they need to be in the building. And we know which kids those need to be. We know which ones are struggling as teachers, and we know which ones need to be in front of us. And I just would like to thank Mr. Hill for acknowledging the huge disparity between, yes, we want to bring kids in for Lippy, and here it's actually happening. I had 20 kids that we arranged to bring in October. We started 20 kids in October at Butte Creek, and we're now up to 50. After in January, we started with 50 students, and we're K through 8 school, and we're a small school with limited staff, and we were able to make that happen. And I have to tell you, we saw such a huge change in many of those students that were struggling emotionally and academically. And I really, truly believe that we saved some of them from, I don't want to even think of what. And they're changing right before our eyes, because they're there sitting with teachers, sitting with staff, and they're safe and they're cared about. And even if it's only 2 hours a day, 2 days a week, they're with us and they're there, and they know we fought to bring them in. And I just would have really loved to have seen that happening in our school district. And I'm a parent of a senior, and the only reason that she is still going to Kennedy is because she is determined to graduate a Trojan. She was robbed of her junior track season, and now it looks like, probably won't get a regular senior year. And I have shed just as many tears as she has. And I wish I felt like our admin were fighting for her as much as I am. And that's all I have to say. And I'd like to thank Mr. Hill for bringing up the Lippy issue, because that's huge. And parents see when people are fighting for their kids and fighting to get them back.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for taking the time to address us tonight.
Thank you.
And next we have Rose Garcia, and then Shayna Shecker. And Rose, if you want to unmute, I will start the timer once you start speaking.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rose Garcia, and I want to thank you to the Mount Angel School District staff and administration and the board members. I grew up in Mount Angel. I graduated from JFK in 2002. I've been part of this community my whole life. My mom is Darlene Wavra. She's a teacher at the middle school. My daughter, I have one kid in the Mount Angel School District. She is an 8th grader at the middle school. And before COVID hit, she was seeing her grandma every day, her friends. And I just have to say, in the beginning with the distant learning, it was okay. We were like, okay, we don't know much about this virus. We're gonna, see what it's all about. And she would get up, she'd get ready for school, just like she would. And then she'd sit, in front of her computer, and she was doing good. Lately, she wakes up 5 minutes before school starts, barely puts her hair up, and she lays in bed. And she said, and I even asked her, I said, have you been learning anything? She said, no. She goes, and she's tired every day. I can tell her her attitude, everything about her is just so different. She's not doing sports. And, you know, my husband and I still go to work every day. Every day we go to work. I go and serve coffee every day, and he's in the car business, and we deal with people every day. And I see teachers every day at the Salem Kaiser School District coming and getting coffee. And to me, it's a slap in my face that these, you know, we can't get the schools back in. And when I am going out every day, and my husband, because if we don't go to work, we don't get a paycheck. And I need to keep a roof over my head. And my kids are stuck at home every day. I have a senior at McKay High School. She's my stepdaughter. I feel so horrible for her. And that was one of the reasons we moved to Mount Angel, was because of the small community and not having all the politics like the bigger schools have. And I'm seeing it now in our little community, and it just breaks my heart. And I'm talking for my eighth grader. My eighth grader wants to be back in school, and we know distance learning does not work. It does not work, and it's been proven. And I don't know why my eighth grader can't go back to in-person learning just like the younger kids. What's the difference? They're in different buildings. They're in different cohorts. It's not going to have an explosive, you know, COVID when one kid gets sick at this cohort. It's not going to shut everybody down. So why can't we all go back at the same time?
Rose, thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. And next we have Shayna Shecker. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, and I'll start the clock once you start speaking.
Hi, yes, thank you. Asking my 5th and 7th grader to wait 2 more months to return to school is absolutely unacceptable. I ask you to go back to the drawing board and figure out a way to move up the date for our teenagers. In regards for the 2 middle school proposals regarding having lunch on site or off site, I would advocate to keep the kids on campus all day. Asking my 13-year-old daughter to walk home alone and then back to school is not safe. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Shayna. And Jill, just confirming that nobody else has signed up to address us. And if you want to, do so now.
You've got everyone for now, Sherry.
Thank you, Jill. Do any board members want to make comments on what we heard from our parents?
I just have a comment about the Lippy, which I wish we could have started much sooner. And this is like personal experience. I have 4 grandchildren who attend Butte Creek. And the day they found out in January that they were going to be able to go 2 days a week for 2 hours, I'd never seen more excited, happy, delighted young children. The youngest one that was going is a kindergarten, and this was going to be like his very first day at school and very first day of riding the bus. And it just shows how important it is for these kids to be back in school, even if it's just for those 2 hours a day, 2 days a week.
Thank you, Teresa. Does anybody else want to make a comment before we move on in our agenda? Rod?
I would just like to say thank you, because I mean we're hearing both here and in a bunch of emails that we've had over the last couple weeks, a lot of really good input from people, so thank you.
Thank you, Rod. Agreed. Okay, let's move on. And I too want to just express my appreciation for those that are standing up and speaking up. It's important that we know what's happening. So thank you. And moving on to action items. So we have a few. The Mount Angel Teachers Association MOU. I believe we're asked to approve it, right, Troy? If you want to go ahead and kick that off.
Yeah, you have a copy of it in your packet, and we were happy to get through this process in short order. Our teachers were very cooperative, and and we came to common ground in less than 3 hours, and it is not a barrier. We are able to move forward without any concerns with our MOU at this time. So I recommend the board approving as presented.
Thank you, Troy. So does anybody want to make a motion to approve the Mount Angel Teachers Association Memorandum of Understanding dated January 28th of 2021?
I move such. I can't
Thank
remember.
you, John.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Teresa. So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, let's go ahead and take the poll. So in favor or not, Greg?
Sorry, aye.
John?
Yay, aye.
Rod?
Aye.
And Teresa?
Aye.
And chair is aye as well. So motion passes. Thank you. And Troy, lead us through the calendar changes for this school year.
Yeah, as you recall, we missed several days in the fall due to the wildfires and the smoke. And then we have a couple of days, 3 days actually, that our students were out a couple weeks ago for power outages and internet being down due to the weather that hit our district and no one else around us. But we're recommending that we add 2 days to the end of the school year to make up for that lost time. And obviously we're hoping that we'll be in-person instruction at that time where it'll be more productive time, even though it is at the end of the year. And again, we had staff return for the 3rd day, but kids were out on all 3 days.
Thank you, Troy. Any questions before someone makes a motion to approve the updated calendar?
Hey, Troy, is there any possibility for extending the calendar for some of these kids that we're really leaving behind right now? I mean, is there anything to carry them through for another month or so?
Well, what we're planning right now is along with our regularly planned summer school, we're looking at a much more comprehensive summer school using the stimulus dollars. So we're in the planning process right now to provide lots of additional opportunities. So yes, that's very possible.
Okay, thanks.
Great question, Rod. And does anybody else have any questions before someone wants to move to approve the updated calendar for this school year?
I'll move to to approve the updated calendar as presented.
Thank you.
John seconds.
Thank you, John. So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, I'll take the poll. So Greg?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Rod?
Aye.
And Teresa?
Aye.
And chair is aye as well, so passes. OSBA Legal Assistance Trust. The verbiage for the motion is in our packets. Does anybody have that ready to go?
Sure. So I have moved that Mount Angel School District authorize district legal counsel to move forward with requesting assistance from OSBA Legal Assistance Trust to assist with costs of litigation in the Bureau of Labor and Industries Order Determination Case number 20-1125.
Thank you.
I second.
And John seconds. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. I'll take the poll. Greg?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Rod?
Aye.
Teresa?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. It passes. Okay. Next on our agenda our discussion items. So planning for hybrid instruction. We've heard the plan. We've been hearing from many parents and concerned individuals who would like to consider moving the time frame up to get more kids in person sooner. So that's where we're at currently. And what input, or who wants to talk about this? Board members.
I wish we could move it up quicker, or, you know, get the kids in there faster. And I feel that's very important to the kids, you know, even if it could be spread out 1 week at a time, moving them in. Don't know that it's possible, and I know there's lots of work that goes into it, but my heart breaks with every letter we've received, with every person that is presented, and I just see how important it is to get kids back in school as soon as possible.
Thank you, Teresa. And my take, I know that it's been challenging, and we've planned, and the updated safety guidelines came out January 19th. We had union negotiations. There's lots of moving pieces. And I'm going to echo what Rod has raised as a concern of mine, and that is the slow rate, how slow we're getting kids back for Lippy. We've been, as Rod mentioned, we've been talking about that at our board meetings as a priority. Gosh, I remember October being excited about that happening soon. So my take, if nothing else, accelerate, get that Lippy going, get those kids who need, all the kids need to be in person, and obviously those who would be deemed as being targeted for limited in-person instruction need it. And so that would be where my strong opinion lies on all of this.
Yeah, I just want to get up to at least the 30 per building that we talked about a month ago as quick as we possibly can. And then if we need to identify more kids to bring in after that, then we do that. But it feels like it's been so lumped to the hybrid learning and bringing that back. And that's getting swung all over by all kinds of things, some of which are in our control and some of which aren't. But the LIPA stuff has been from the start completely within our control. And those are our most at-risk kids. Those are the ones that need this the most. So I want to make sure that nothing stops us from getting at least those kids into the building. I know stuff can go on with the hybrid model and weird stuff can happen and things can get pulled out from underneath us. But on the Lippy, I want to make sure that we're committed to moving forward with it. That's my only concern with it. I mean, I've got minor concerns with lots of other stuff. I mean, I'm on board with the idea that all of the buildings should be starting at the same time. You know, maybe not all of the classes in all of the buildings, but, you know, why not have this, you know, the first and second and the fifth graders and the ninth graders go in, that kind of thing. You know, a small group from each building. Because, you know, I think early on in the pandemic, the real concern with the real thing that drove starting the little kids first was the belief early in the pandemic that they were at much lower risk for disease. And I think there's plenty of data out there now that says that all of the age kids are pretty well protected from disease. So I think the idea of starting with the little kids and moving up is not, from a disease point of view, is not really valid. I mean, I get that they need to be in front of an instructor more, but I really think we can be at least on some level starting at all of the buildings with at least one class. I'll shut up.
Thank you, Rod. Greg, you unmuted. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I sort of wanted to hear Troy's response to that, but I was just going to ask if there was anything that we could do as a board in terms of policy or budget to help speed the process up. And I don't know the answer to that.
That's a great question. Thank you, Greg. And Troy, do you want to respond before you hear from any other board members?
Yeah, just a quick comment. You know, I'm not making excuses for anything. It's challenging internally beyond what I can even provide the details for. But as a reminder, you know, we did go through a freeze at the state level, you know, November, to where we could not bring kids in the building for quite some time. And then kicking it back off has been a challenge for us. So no, I mean, when you go against the advisory, there's risk involved, but sounds like the board's willing to take that and accept that responsibility. I'm happy with moving forward. We can try to move forward faster, but I can't guarantee anything until I've talked with my admin team, because they don't even have schedules completed for those kids to return in secondary level. So at all levels. So I can't just say, you know, we could bump it up a certain amount of time without talking with my admin team and going through the specifics of it. So.
And Troy, I would ask a follow-up question. What are the risks of going against the advisory? Because to me, my process practical brain, to me, it makes sense to stagger kids back into in-person. And I've looked up school district plans throughout the state. They're all very similar, and they all stagger similarly. And so what would we be risking being covered by liability insurance? Should we get sued? What are the risks other than going staged and bringing groups of kids in over time allows the dynamic system of our school district to adjust along the way? To me, it makes sense. So yeah, I'm actually not in favor of bringing all three buildings back simultaneously. I would be interested in maybe speeding up the timing, if that makes sense, just from one board member's perspective. But do you know what the risks are if we were to bring back secondary before the primary were back in person?
No, I haven't heard of any districts doing that, so I would have to check. But you know, right now our technology for the live streaming has been prioritized at the lower levels. So as you heard Scott talking earlier, he's in the process of installing, you know, screens and TVs and working his way up, starting with the lowest grades. So to move up the upper levels earlier, we could do that, but they would not likely have the ability to live stream at the rate they currently are planned for. That's my biggest, the thing I can think of right away. But I would have to visit with my team to see what we could do to step it up. And we have spring break in there as well.
Yeah, and thank you, Troy. John, do you have anything to say before we allow for additional? Did you say no?
No.
Okay, thank you. I was speaking over you. Sorry, this Zoom, it's hard. Okay, Rod, did you have something more?
Yeah, I just had one more thing, and I just want to make sure that my position's clear. I'm not really, you know, and it's been pretty clear for the last several months. I'm not actually in favor of overall accelerating how fast we get kids back in. But what I am in favor of is making it a more equitable way of getting the kids back in, you know, where it's some in all of the different grade levels sort of thing. And maybe it's not all the different grade levels, but at least all the different buildings.
Thank you for that clarification. Anybody else have comments for the good of the planners who have a lot on their plates and then some? And I would just, again, this is my personal mindset as a human and as a member of a board, and just in life in general. I tend to be risk averse, and I tend to not want to be the trailblazer. I tend to want to see where the experts are recommending and follow their recommendations. I tend not to want Manning School District to be an outlier from how other districts seem to be planning implementing their return to in-person with the hybrid learning. So yeah, it's hard, and there's a lot of answers that aren't great, and I don't know that there's any great answer available to us. And so, you know, again, as Greg said, I think what we need as a board, we need to know if we can be of further assistance. And just for the good of the audience, the role of the board is a unique one to government, because we are elected officials, and we're a board of 5 people, and we only have authority when we have the majority in favor of something. And our role is not intended to be operational. We hire Troy so he can be the operational guy, and he hires his administrative team so they can be the operational people. So as Greg mentioned, our main way of impacting all of this is to share our opinions, and when it comes to operations, provide policy and budget and our opinions about how we think direction wise we should go. And it's really the hard task of Troy and his administrative team and everyone working within in the district who gets a paycheck to make it happen and make those decisions. And so I guess back to Greg's comment, Troy, if there's anything you know that the board needs to take action on to help facilitate this return to in-person learning, let us know.
Okay, thank you.
And Rod,
Mary, yeah, I just wanted to say that these are, I'll just say, extraordinary times and extraordinarily big decisions that we're talking about here. You know, bigger decisions every month than, you know, we've made in the last 10 years on a school board. So I think the board has a responsibility to make sure that the administrators' actions are in line with the community's expectations. I mean, we are the voice of the community, and I'm not saying I'm always the exact voice of the community, but that's our role here. And if Troy's actions on these big decisions are moving away from where the community wants it to go, we need to step in and change that. However we need to do it.
all right. Any other board members want to comment? Troy, do you have any questions or
Nope.
comments? Okay, before we move on. All right. Calendar for the 2021-22 school year. Troy, go ahead and talk us through this one.
So I have 2 proposals, and there's still a couple details to work out that I'll share with you, but it's on your calendar to have it presented to you this month. I'll come back to you next month with any changes and be on the agenda for approval. I heard a couple parents ask about next year. We have not heard anything from the state level as to what they're expecting for the return in the fall, if there's going to be any further restrictions or any looser restrictions, or if there's any possibility that you know, the governor's orders will be lifted and that we could potentially return as to pre-March levels where everybody's in with no restrictions. But that's what we're going to shoot for. So draft 1 is that you have in your packets there. Draft 1 is proposing a calendar that we started with at the beginning of the 19-20 school year. So putting back in our early releases and late starts, same start and stop times for the year, same holidays, and back to our previous parent-teacher conference structure. So that's for that is for the first draft that you have in your packet. And the second draft is if we are required to return to hybrid. So again, same start and stop times, but again, no early releases or late starts because we currently provide that on Wednesdays. And then we did leave in this draft the parent-teacher conferences as they are currently, as they were in our normal schedule, not the format of the virtual home visits, but that could change. We have our Teachers Association is reviewing that at this time and going to provide feedback as well. But that's the only detail that I expect to potentially change for these two calendars. And we've never done this before that I'm aware of, but when we come back next month, we'll probably be recommending to the board to adopt both calendars with the understanding that only using the second option if we are required to return in hybrid, in case it changes over the summer or last minute. So you'll see those next month for approval.
Okay, thank you, Troy. Does anybody have questions or comments for Troy on the proposed calendars for next school year? Okay, and what is next on the agenda but to adjourn? So I'm gonna.
Can I ask
go
a
ahead,
question?
Greg.
Sorry,
Yep.
this is out of the order of the agenda, but
Oh, go ahead. I'll allow it.
Cool, thank you. Jumping back to the activities one, you might have already said this, but I remember the email about Maze. Now, where are we going with that in the middle school activities? Do we have a process for letting those kids start doing some stuff?
Middle school, they're waiting for high school plans so that we'll know how much space we're going to have available, or if we're going to have space available for activities outside. The Maze, they're going to start up. They've requested to start up March 22nd, but they'll be available to start up as early as March 20th for their activities. But middle school, we don't have a plan yet because they're going to wait for the lead from our OSAA sports first, because if we have to use all of our baseball, softball facilities to spread kids out, have them be able to practice at the same time, we want to know what our limits are for our facilities.
Okay, so they'll follow the high school lead depending on what facilities are available.
Correct. Yeah.
Can you give us more info on that next month, Troy?
Yeah. And we may be able to provide some interim information if, once we see what OSAA rolls out in the next week or 10 days.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Good clarification. Anything else before we adjourn?
Well, thank you all for the discussion. It's good discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And we're going to go ahead and adjourn. Take care. Be safe.